Monsieur Anber.
Monsieur Casavant. Fortunately, I am not toasting you with my regular cup. This is a cup of coffee from the gas station on the corner. So,
but the gas station from which corner? For those who don't know, you're back on the road again, right? The traveling traveling Cutman. Where are you this time?
Can we not incorporate like soundtrack into our stuff, or is that not legal? Like we can't use soundtrack, huh?
Yeah, well, no, I think we could potentially, but it's one of those things that we would need a bit of more of a IT savvy people, I think, post production once this podcast is done and this conversation is over, because that would be the next step, of course, to have. What music did you have in mind?
Well, right when you said that, I thought about Willie Nelson, On the Road Again, you know.
Yeah, the very
get back on the road again. Yeah.
So, you know, it's crazy how sometimes simplicity gets very popular. As I bring in maybe a bit early here, as our good friend Iceman John Scully is back to being horizontally or vertically challenged here with the screen. Yeah, there we go. We're back. Okay, now we're okay. This is
it's amazing how he survives in day-to-day life. It really is.
No, but this one I don't think I can blame him. He was he looked ready to go a few moments ago. But so those of you who don't recognize Iceman John Scully, who's become a regular part of the show, while Russ, just to we'll get to Scully in a second here, but you were saying that the coffee cup that you had in the corner, it's in the corner of what's it, Sunset and Paradise? Is that what the corner intersection is?
Where I'm sitting to you now is like the greatest intersection name in the entire world. It's Sunset and Paradise, right? That's where I'm sitting from you now. This came from the corner of Sunset and Spencer, which is the next block down.
Not as nice.
Not as quite as nice as Sunset and Paradise. Like, Scully, is that beautiful or what? Like, is that
it sounds like a singing duo.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not bad at all. We're going to get to a lot of things on the podcast, in addition of calling Russ Anber. Thank you for tuning in. We'll get to the Shakur Stevenson fight from this past weekend. A lot of action this upcoming weekend, even though Teofimo Lopez, his fight is out against Kambosos due to COVID. There's going to be some heavyweight talks with the Wilder Fury press conference, which we'll get to relatively quickly. But for now, Russ, that you're in Vegas, I would like to maybe explain to people that you're back in training camp or in preparation for Loma's fight, Vasiliy Lomachenko's first bout since the loss to Teofimo Lopez last year, correct?
Sort of correct. I was in training camp the couple of days previous before getting to Vegas. I got to Vegas last night. So I was in LA and I got to spend some time in training camp with Janibek, who was in the co-feature. So Buddy and I were with Janibek in LA. And then I drove up to Camarillo and did some pad work and stuff yesterday with Loma, which made me realize just how long it's been since I've done pads and how out of shape I am, because my triceps are sore, my lats are sore, all the muscles you use for my forearms, unbelievable how sore they are, and he's banging really hard as well. And I wanted to put the intensity into it, and boy, 2 days later, I can feel the soreness. But yeah, it was great to see him. He's in a wonderful frame of mind. He seems happy, very different from the way he was fight week with Lopez. So I mean, I know this wasn't fight week, you know, it's just he's in his gym and whatnot. So, but yeah, he seemed wonderful, and I'm very excited to have him back and to be back in the corner and to be with him. And you know, watching him work in the gym, like the stuff he does and how people, it's a shame that this stuff is not shown to people, and maybe laymen wouldn't understand it. But as I know that Scully, if he saw it, or when I see it, after being in the business for as long as I have, my mouth still goes, what? Like when the stuff he does is beyond belief, stuff that I've never seen the human body do at the speed and power in which he does it. Like this is saved for very few greats in the game, and he's one of them.
All right, so I'll get to I want to have Scully's input on training camp and some of these elite fighters when they come back from a fight. But Russ, you said that Loma, what I find interesting is that he's still doing things physically, so and he mentally, you're saying he's in the right state of mind, so there's no shortage of kind of, we can take the rumor out then and dispel it that he's maybe not as much into this love of the sport as he once was, coming off a loss now against Lopez, and at a later stage of his career and his accomplishments, the fire and the desire still seems all there.
Absolutely. And as a matter of fact, he was also, we were talking yesterday, and I think he had come out publicly and said this a little while ago, maybe last week or before, where he said he believes that Teofimo Lopez should be the undisputed lightweight champion of the world. You know,
Right.
he took for Lopez on that, you know, and he still feels that maybe he didn't lose the fight. He thought maybe the fight should have been scored a draw. But nonetheless, he feels that, you know, this business of Haney having the title and Lopez is a franchise champion after the WBC had told him, you're going to be franchise champion. This can never be taken away from you. It's yours. And then suddenly it's transferred to Teofimo, you know, so it's crazy. And technically, like, it's like saying you're the Olympic gold medalist. Oh, but if you lose your next fight, you lose your Olympic gold medal, you know, like it's crazy. So he beat Luke Campbell for the title. Lopez beat Loma, who wasn't in recess, or you know, he defended his title and didn't lose the lightweight title to Teofimo Lopez. Like, it's crazy. So what are you gonna do? I'll let Scully go on about that.
And Scully, I wanted to ask you, because Russ is talking a lot about Lomachenko, of course, being something rare in the gym, even in all of your career. So you haven't seen in Scully maybe Loma in the gym like Russ has, but do you think your impressions from looking at his career so far and the way he fought against Lopez is what he said? Like, what are your standards from an outsider looking in of what you expect from Lomachenko? You still think he could be? Russ, what do you want to say here?
I was going to say he hasn't seen Loma, but he's seen Beterbiev, and I know for a fact that he has seen things there that has never been seen. He's never seen before, so he can speak of this.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it seems like, to me, I've always noticed the guys, and we've talked about this before, guys from that program and that part of the world have a different mentality coming, you know, in all aspects of boxing and training and just even the way that they live. So I don't expect any regression from Lomachenko at all. Like that never even entered my mind this whole time. You know, so yeah, I expect him to be the same as he always has been. I wouldn't expect that to be any different.
What about, Russ, the argument that some say that Loma, and we saw against Lopez, takes time to get going? He the first half of the bout, or even the first four rounds, he's maybe a bit too on the studying pace and should be a bit more aggressive. Has that been a talk at all? Like, even if you're not fighting Lopez again, are you going to change? Do you think there's going to be any different approach, or you think people just don't necessarily understand and appreciate what Loma's trying to do in the early rounds, dissecting his opponent?
No, I think the Lopez fight was the only fight in which, and I think, you know, we can say it afterwards, but I don't want to make the excuses, but the size and everything, I think the shoulder, all these things made for that. He had to be careful in those early parts of the round. He couldn't afford to go toe to toe with a you know, power puncher like Lopez. But I don't think that that's been a fault with Lomachenko in his previous fights. I mean, he maybe the first round he sees what he's got, and then the motor starts and he's going, you know, and he's going, and you think it's full speed, but it's only second gear. And then you're into round 6 and he's hit fourth gear and still hasn't hit stride yet, you know? So no, I don't believe for 1 second that he's a slow starter or whatever. I don't deem him as a slow starter at all.
Okay, fair enough. And then about a week before now, like next Friday will be the weigh-in, correct? Against Nakatani.
Yeah.
And anything from the studying of opponents, when would that happen? Like, at this stage, do you think you're still watching tape of Nakatani, or that should already have been?
Oh, he's already done that. It's already been done. As a matter of fact, when I got there, I said, so how's everything been? Have you been practicing doing this? And he didn't understand what I meant. You know, I said, what do you mean? I said, looking up. Have you practiced looking up at Nakatani? And he started laughing, you know, because Nakatani's a tall kid, right? But you could see that what the strategy is going to be with the work that his father was asking us to do on the mitts. You could see what the strategy is going to be against the taller opponent.
Scully, for having worked with a lot of world-class fighters, when they get to world title bouts, or, you know, in the case of Loma, it will not be a world title bout, but it's, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Russ, but this is not for a world title, right? This one here is just to get back into position to challenge for a world title afterwards.
This will be the first fight since Lomachenko's first professional debut that he is not involved in a world title fight.
Right. Exactly.
That's crazy. Think about that. It's only going to be your second non-world championship fight in your career. And the only other one was your pro debut. Let that sink in for a second.
And Nakatani is no slouch. I mean, he's not a world title holder, but he presents challenges, of course, and it'll be interesting as a bounce-back fight for Loma. Never no doubt about it. Now, Scully, for the training camp question, I wanted to ask you about whether it's Beterbiev, Chad Dawson, and others in the past. What separates, for the people at home wondering, like, what separates the strategy? Like, what's the ideal training camp period you want? And Russ, you can jump in as well afterwards. I'm wondering, when you get into these type of world title bouts, what's the amount of weeks you would like ideally? How many like sparring sessions or sparring partners you think needs to be broken down? And at this stage, we're about a week before the bout, where are you towards the end of that preparation?
Right. Well, it's different for every guy because, I've worked with guys who didn't need a lot of sparring. They didn't like a lot of sparring. I've worked with guys who only wanted to spar, and they didn't feel confident, if they didn't spar all the time. So I try to appease them to a certain degree, but I have to do what helps. But I'll give an example. I try not to plan out a training camp too far in advance, only because of this. I'll give an example. Chad Dawson was fighting one of the fights I had him with, and we were about 9 days out, and he was looking good. And then there was a day of sparring, and he looked the best I've ever seen him in his career, ever. And I remember telling someone, I go, I just realized like a man could kill another man in the ring. Like he was hitting these guys with such blistering hard combinations. And when the sparring was over, we did like 8 rounds. And I told him, I said, listen, you're never going to be better in your life than you were today. You're the best you're ever going to be today. I go, we don't need to spar anymore until the fight. You're going to hold on to this and we're just going to stay loose or whatever. And, and I hit it on the head. Like 8 or 9 days later, he fought the fight and he, looked dominant the whole way because I wanted him to come in off of such a stellar sparring performance. He was so awesome. And I was like, we can't do better than that. Like, you can't get sharper than this. So for his state of mind, I said, let's go into the fight on this. And we did shadow boxing and stuff. Now, granted, another guy, I might go much closer to the fight. And I won't say who, but I even had a point where a world-class guy, but he was, I don't know if he was stressed out or whatever. And I actually, on the last sparring, I actually told the sparring partner, look, take it easy. Like, take it easy on you.
Just for his confidence not to
right,
get wild,
right. I said, we can't go into a world championship fight with a guy with a losing record pounding on this guy. And so I said, look, he's burnt out. He's a little burnt out. He's stressed out. I can't have you torturing this freaking guy. So he took it easy, and they did 10 rounds. And afterwards, the fighter that I was with, he was like, man, I feel good, man. I feel good. So he went into the fight on a high note.
Right.
So, some guys feel like, oh, we got to get the hard sparring, and you do, but sometimes you got to play. You got to manipulate things, when things are winding down and the fight is coming, you can't afford, because a fighter's mind can be fragile in those. Like, you could have a training camp for 10 weeks and you could literally ruin a guy in the last 6 days. Wow. Because you do something, you just stress, you make a move that you wouldn't normally do, but you get overzealous because the big fight's coming. So a trainer, more than just as much as the fighter, needs to keep his head and keep everything in perspective leading right up to the fight, because you could make a mistake that costs the fighter the fight in those last days.
It's funny you say that, and I'm convinced of something, although I have no way of proving it. But Matt, one day you can ask Mark Ramsey about this. Okay. We're into, I believe, what was the actual final day of sparring, or it might not even have been a scheduled day of sparring, when Jean was set to fight Kovalev, the first fight. And Murat Gassiev was in the gym. And Jean says, yeah, I want to try him. I want to try Gassiev.
Oh, because you were in Big Bear, California, probably, right?
Correct. Now, Gassiev is a cruiserweight, and proved to be a great cruiserweight fighter, right? And I think they might have only done one round. But that one round where Jean just fired away with everything he had, bam, 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 and he's hitting Gassiev, and boom, boom. He went three. Jean wanted to put a 3-minute assault on, like really empty himself as if it would be the 12th round of a fight. And he left it in the gym. I'm convinced that 3 minutes that he did, what that took out of him. Now, I could be wrong. I could be way out in left field on this, but Jean had been looking so good, and that explosiveness, and he hit Gassiev, boom, good shot. I mean, it was only one round, but Jean put pedal to the metal on it. And I always feel that, and you can ask Mark, I always felt that was something we shouldn't have done. Mark didn't want to do it. Jean was the one who wanted to do it. And that's where you're knowing your fighter and just when to pull him off a little bit and keep him right where he is and maintain is an art that you can't even explain or teach. You just kind of have to figure it out and know your fighter and know what they need, whether he's looking good or looking bad. You have to make it work as you get close to the fight.
Great inside stuff. And the training camp portion of it, what I would like to know, guys, is that how much of it is, as coaches, do you want the training camp period to not just be about cutting weight, but ideally if your fighter is active, like a Lomachenko, Russ, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've rarely heard anything about weight being an issue, or you have to cater to, training camp to have select trainings that are going to be very much about making weight instead of focusing on the technique and the opponent in front of you. But so Loma, I think, is one of those that weight is never an issue. Therefore, you can tailor the training camp more towards the specifics of what needs to be done and your opponent. And isn't that the biggest difference between an ideal training camp and then a training camp setting where so many of these guys now only show up for the training camp portion of a fight and aren't really in the gym enough in between those periods of times, and now it's a different approach. Is that something? Scully, if you would like to go first.
Yeah, so it goes. I'll answer you about Loma after.
Well, I could give you an example. 2 fights in a row. Chad Dawson, when he fought Hopkins the second time, had to make 175. Training camp, and I always say it was one of the best training camps ever. Everything was very smooth, and he made the weight. What I would say, for a regular fighter, he made it comfortable. Had to struggle a bit. Every fighter does. When he fought Ward, now he looked great against, he was very solid against Hopkins, and everybody was talking about it, right? His next fight, he fights Ward. Now, I was assured going into the fight that making 168 was going to not be a problem. So, okay, it's going to be great. Well, the entire, literally from the first day to the last minute before getting on the scale, the only focus was making weight. Everything done was to make weight. It was so bad that at one point, maybe, less than 2 weeks before the fight, in front of everybody, I said, well, let's just call the fight off then. Like, if we got to go through all this, what's the point of going? Chad wasn't there. I wouldn't say that in front of him, but in front of our team. And I'm like, let's just call it off. What are we doing? Everything is about making weight. We haven't worked on anything that we need to work on. And, they were taking, ice baths and, just all kinds of crazy stuff. And, so psychologically, the fighter's not stupid, regardless of what he says. Because if KO Magazine did an interview with Chad a week before he fought Ward, he would have said the same thing he said before he fought Hopkins. I feel great. Training camp's going great. Blah, 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 blah.
Weight's not an issue,
Right. And everything is a lie. That's why it's amusing to me. Like I had a fight with him, and at the final press conference, I got up and, the reporter asked me, so how do you feel going into the fight? And I started laughing because I saw the ridiculousness of it. I go, I got it. And I'm on the podium. And I said, what do you think I'm going to say? I said, I'm about to tell you the same thing that everybody here told you. I feel great. I feel great. I can't wait for this fight. everything that's wrong with me, I'm going to tell you after the fight.
Right. Exactly. That's always the case.
Yeah. Like I said, I use that as an example, but Chad spent 9 weeks making weight to fight Andre Ward. That was the only focus, and that's what you'd be surprised how many fighters have to do that. It's not good. It's not right, but it's just the way it is.
And Matt, I remember when Scully was in camp and he was reporting to me some of the things that he was saying, where he's telling the guy, look, I don't care what you say. This is his weight. I don't care what you say he's going to do. He's got to make this and he's not near it.
Right.
And isn't that crazy sometimes how just Scully, the experience of, and Russ, you guys being in the gyms for so many years, Scully, you having to make the weight yourselves throughout your career. You don't need always this science. Look, there's great medicine and advancements and sport nutritionists. We know that they have a place in the sport to an extent, or the degree they have. That's always a little bit debatable, but you could tell just by your experience and your human eyes of how much this weight would be an issue without having to break it down scientifically, right? You knew this was a problem.
Right. Well, that's what happened. When I asked the guy originally, I said, all right, are you sure he can make the weight? And he gave me all these scientific terms, enzymes and protein, and we're going to do this, and we're going to raise his metabolic levels. And I'm like, all right, sounds cool, And then we got there, and after 5 weeks, I'm like, hey, he weighs more than he did when we got here. I go, and that's the truth. I write everything down. Yeah. We got to training camp July 7th. 2012, he weighed 182. Exactly 5 weeks later, after all the scientific nonsense, he weighed 184. He had gained 2 pounds. So now, instead of 9 weeks to lose it, he had 4 weeks to lose 2 more pounds than he originally did. So all the nonsense is, the scale doesn't lie. The ring doesn't lie. There's certain things that don't lie. And you just can't talk your way out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you know what? I think with Loma, the fact that something drives this guy to want to train. And he said something to me a few years ago in one of our camps. I don't know if he said it to me or if he said it to me and then reiterated it in an interview or vice versa. But I think he said it to me first and then reiterated. He says, I can train 24 hours a day. Wow. And he loves it. He's like Arthur, like Arthur does a warm up. For most fighters, that's the workout. Yeah. What do you mean warm up? That's the workout. And Loma is the same way. So this doesn't stop when the fight is over. Yeah, he'll take a week off or whatever. But it's so ingrained in him. It's so addictive to him to push his body to these limits. And it doesn't have to be boxing. It could be doing something else. He plays ice hockey in the winter. He swims. He does different things. He needs to push himself physically. And when he comes to camp, he's already in shape. He just gets in even better shape. Whereas a lot of fighters use the first 4 weeks of an 8-week camp trying to, okay, let's get going. Let's try to get some of this weight off. He's already within pounds of his weight, like it's not a big deal. So there's never a focus. With Loma, it's more about dealing with the mileage on his body at such a high level for his whole life. That's probably more of a focus than anything else. Everything else is fine. Like he eats good, trains, he makes the weight without a problem, never is in, sauna suits and dying and, I gotta, carries himself. You never look at him on the scale and say, oh, he looks terrible. You never look at him like that. So that's the way consummate pros used to be back then. When you'd get a call to fight and you go to camp, you were already within 8 pounds of your weight. You're already there. You're ready to start sparring. Scully, when we went to the UK and you came with us, we were sparring not the first week, because the first week, the second week, we got there 8 weeks in advance with a 7-week camp. We were already sparring into the second week, full blast. Let's go.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. No, it's a great point about the fact that if the fighters could focus on that portion of it, but you're not seeing it as much as you used to. Some of them, it's really that they love it. In the case of, you're saying, Loma, Arthur, but those who are doing it more for at the certain stage of their career, they've done it throughout the amateur ranks. They've trained so long that they just want to train for really when they have a date and when they have to show up. And I think that's where you're seeing more and more fights that are condensed in training camps and having to make the weight. And probably the results appear differently, right? Because you agree with this theory that we're seeing of the last few years, is some people actually believe that they should bulk up almost like as much as possible and then water drain yourself. Remember that, Russ, where a lot of guys now, and this is an MMA, especially with less categories, there's like 15 pounds in between weight classes compared to boxing, where in some instances it's only as little as 3 pounds between weight divisions, this water loading thing. But I think, relatively speaking, if you can stay like a Manny Pacquiao, close to your fighting weight at all times and be in shape at all times, I don't think it's a coincidence that these fighters end up having a longer career like Bernard Hopkins than those who have to always seem to lose 15 to 20 pounds for training camp.
And maybe that's something we should, talk about at a future date. But, the fact that athletic commissions allow that disparity in weight classes with MMA fighters that they wouldn't allow in boxing. Like if a match came up where there was that kind of a difference between weight, they say, oh, no, fight's off. You can't have that fight. But in MMA, that's the weight class difference, No
way, but they're the same weight. They weigh the same thing.
I'm sorry?
Like you're in boxing, you're saying they wouldn't care as much if there was weight discrepancy as long as they're both the same weight. It's not 15 pounds. One guy has an advantage over the other.
No, but I'm saying in MMA, the difference in category weights is much larger, right?
100%. It's basically what boxing was when it had 8 divisions.
Maybe, but now but for the safety of fighters, we instituted those other divisions so that people can make that weight, because it's a big difference. There's a big difference. So now what you're doing is you're forcing the cheating, the water loading, the sucking weight. You're forcing guys to do this because they're stuck in the middle of no man's land in having to lose weight where they would be perfectly fine, let's say at I don't know, 145, and you're forcing them that they have to get down to 138, because there is no 145-pound weight class. Like that's then I think commission should have a certain responsibility for that, to say, no, you can't have this kind of disparity between weight classes. There's too many humans that can fit into that shouldn't be forced to gain or lose that weight.
Very good. All right, gentlemen, it's already a bit like the airline industries, where we have estimated times of departures and arrivals, and we're rarely within those time limits. We went a bit over on that topic, but I think for a good reason. So I want to get to the heavyweight fighters, though, and the Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder press conference this week. There was the first face-to-face we had an opportunity to see both men since their second fight, prior to probably one of the bigger fights that happened right before the pandemic in the winter of 2020. What to me stood out in the press conference, besides the fact that Wilder had an idea to now be kind of silent, he let Malik Scott, his new trainer, do most of the talking. They had the 6-minute stare down. But to me, it was a lot what Fury was saying. It's almost as if his camp was expecting Wilder all along. Now, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but based on the comments I've heard, maybe he just meant he was always staying in the gym and staying prepared. But he really looked like his focus has been on Wilder the entire time. And if Anthony Joshua was never really even an option, but that's what stood out to me. I would like to hear your thoughts on what stood out for the first face-to-face we got, we had a chance to see between Fury and Wilder since their fight over a year ago at this point.
Who do you want first?
Scully, how about you? What stood out to you?
I think Wilder, I don't know what the word, I don't know, weird, or like he's a little, I think he's trying too hard to be in the mental aspects of the game. Like he's looking so deep into everything since that loss. He's looking at, like he's telling you, oh, I'm doing this because of this. Like he's trying to give away the secrets to tell why he's doing something. And he's trying to tell us what Fury's thinking. And, I think he's trying to maybe outsmart himself. I think he should just relax and concentrate on the fight, like the actual fight, because I think he's too concerned with stuff that really doesn't matter. Like he's like, well, when he looked at me, I know he was thinking this, and then he looked away for a second, and that meant this. And it's like, listen, relax, like just get yourself in shape and fight, because you start thinking too much, like man, so why did my opponent say that as opposed to this? What's he thinking? Well, maybe this and maybe that. You just make yourself crazy trying to figure out what the other guy's thinking. And meanwhile, he's not thinking anything. He's just standing there, and you're reading all these signs from him, and he has no idea what you'd even be talking about. I think Wilder. I think Fury messed his head up to a degree psychologically. I think he's really affected. He's really trying to find something. He's trying to find a reason. He's trying to find, all these different things. He talks almost like he's lost touch with reality to a certain degree, and
like the suit excuse after the rematch, and then
everything he says is like he's put a lot of thought into it. It's like he's thinking about this stuff 24 hours a day. And, you can never just get a straight answer out of him. Everything is like, he's talking about like biblical times and warrior times and the warrior code and all this stuff. And instead of just saying, I'm going to train really hard and, do my best. But he's looking too deep, I think, into it. I think he can't believe he got beat the way he did. And he thinks there must be some kind of biblical, mystical reason why he lost, other than the fact that Fury took it to him and fought a better fight and stopped him.
No, that's an interesting perspective, because Russ, you have a unique take based on the fact you even saw Deontay in the dressing room. You had a relationship with Deontay throughout his career for a large extent of it. So what do you think of what Scully brought up?
Yeah, look, there's obviously a conscious effort being made that they've talked about before going on camera, saying, okay, we're going to let Malik talk. You're not going to say anything. This, like, they're playing this game of trying to say, last time we yelled and screamed at Fury, now we're not going to. This is conscious. This is not it's on purpose that they're doing this, and I don't know why. Because it's a part of the game that I always hated. This kind of stuff where you're overthinking everything. Just be yourself, go out, say what you have to say. I got beat. I think I was robbed. I think I'm going to prove to you I didn't. Thank you very much. But you're so worried about taking on a new persona, that you're occupying energy, and you're taking energy to think about this and then execute it as part of the script. So that I think is wrong. But to get back to your original question as to, it looked like it was Fury all along. Somewhere in the universe lies the truth behind why this fight was never made with Joshua and Fury.
Here we go again. You still can't get over it. Not that they wouldn't have taken step aside money and just gone on with it, and just the winner fights the other one.
No, but you just said that Fury's looked like he's getting ready for Wilder the whole time.
Well, he says, I've been preparing 18 months for Wilder. The first time I gave him a lesson. The second time I KO'd him. Now I'm just gonna run over him and ruin him forever. Something along those lines. It's almost as if he was always intent on wanting to fight Wilder, and it didn't come to my attention until Eddie Hearn brought it up when the fight didn't happen. And he says, "Look, it looks clear to us that Fury's side really wanted kind of a Wilder third fight, even before they knew the final judgment of what the ruling was going to be." But Eddie Hearn kind of put that in my head, and I looked at the press conference and listened to everything Tyson Fury, and I said, Fury did nothing to dispel those rumors. And then I'm thinking, regardless of who wins this fight, it's probably going to be very frustrating for fans to expect that the winner of Fury Wilder ends up facing the winner of Joshua-Usyk. Like, to me, I think it sets us again a little bit back in the negotiations, but that was my takeaway from it. But I agreed a lot with what Scully said as well.
Yeah, it's something's a little strange, but we'll see. Look, it's happening now. And we're going to end up getting Usyk versus Joshua, and we're going to get Wilder versus Fury, and we'll see where it goes from there. And we're still getting some great fights out of the deal. Yeah, but it's I guess just from the whole perspective of why the fight didn't get made, what happened, you were so close. I mean, I've never. I mean, Scully, you can tell me if different, but I've never seen a fight which was literally announced, like it was all but officially announced, never materialized.
Right. It like you said, I thought the fight was set. I thought it was all. I thought that, and then it like the Wilder fight just came out of nowhere. Like they must have already had it planned because they just came out like a couple days later and said, "Up, we changed it. We're fighting Wilder." It's like, well, you didn't just meet at a coffee shop and say, let's just switch it, so they must have had something going on, but I thought Joshua and Fury was going to be cool because it was going to be so massive in England. It was going to be so, it would have been just a phenomenal event. That's the only time I think in recent years that I actually considered going to England for a fight. I would have liked to have been there for that one. So, we missed out. We definitely missed out on something.
But yeah, Russ, go ahead.
And I was going to say, and Fury continues to take shots at AJ by saying that Wilder will knock him spark out in one round, like it's not even a match. Wilder knocks out Joshua in one round. So he's still taking shots at AJ and trying to build credibility, for Wilder while he's fighting Wilder and AJ's going to fight Usyk. So very strange times.
And for Usyk fighting Joshua, kind of what I'm reading now is that it almost seems like from Joshua's camp and their fans, there's a letdown that, we went from the biggest fight and now we're fighting Usyk. Usyk had trouble against Chisora, not that exciting. It's a mandatory, whatever, but correct me if I'm wrong, Russ, but I think a lot of these people who are overlooking Usyk because based on his performance against Chisora, parts of the fight he didn't look great. I agreed with at that weight, but he's been preparing Usyk in the gym, and he's somebody again who trains constantly. Like it would seem to me that he has all to gain in this fight against Joshua now, who might be a little bit rattled that he's not getting the Fury fight, or maybe it's not an actual factor in for Joshua, and it's only their fans who believe this. But I think Usyk's in a position that he could surprise many. Because if they're only basing off Chisora's performance, I think it could be a mistake, right? Like, any indication from your perspective, Russ, that the Chisora fight was more like an experience gainer, or I don't even know how to word it properly, but I don't know if you agree with me that it's looking as if the fans of Joshua overlook Usyk are making a mistake.
I had this discussion with Egis and with Alex Krasyuk saying, let's not take a heavyweight fight before fighting Joshua. Let's get some training, get some heavyweights into camp, spar with them, don't. But of course, it became an unrealistic possibility. You couldn't sit idle waiting for 2 years for the fight to happen. So right. I understand that you had to take it. So worst case scenario, you take the fight. And yes, I believe there are people out there who are saying exactly what you're saying, Matt. He didn't look good, or this wasn't good, or, if Joshua hits him with this, it's over, blah, 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 blah. Okay. But don't forget, Usyk learns as well. You're not the only one who learns and says, there's flaws. Usyk learns as well and gets better. I personally have too much respect for everybody involved in the Joshua camp, whether it be Rob McCracken, Joshua himself, anybody, KD, David Gonza, any of those guys in camp. They're not taking Usyk lightly. They're not only looking and saying, he struggled a little against Chisora. It'll be no problem for us. No, they're saying if he did struggle, he's going to fix the things that he might have struggled with, and it's not going to be the same fighter. The whole reason for taking the Chisora fight was to figure out what the flaws might be, what it might be to have a massive guy in there with you, a guy that's putting pressure on you, a guy that's going to force you and weigh on you and stuff. They took it for that reason, so that they could fix whatever weaknesses they might have seen. That's how they should be thinking. That's how I think they're thinking. So, but Usyk is a rare gem. He's a rare kind of guy who you never know what you're going to get from him, because he's that gifted, he's that determined, he's that mentally strong to do that. And you're talking about a guy who has made a career, and Scully knows how much I love this, because Otis went through it. He's a road warrior. This guy goes into the opposing people's arena and silences the crowd. That's massive. I love that feeling. That's the greatest feeling in the world, is to go into someone's hometown. And Scully will tell you about Bobby Guducci. You know, it's all that kind of stuff that just is so exciting about boxing.
Yeah.
And Usyk kind of gets a bad rap, I think, a little bit from the Chisora fight. When you look at Chisora's performance against Joseph Parker and his next fight afterwards, he looked really good in against Joseph Parker, a fight, Russ, of course, you were in the corner for. So, look, I think Usyk, sometimes people are a bit, because of his standards of excellence that we've come to expect, the standards get raised. I think a lot of fighters, a lot of heavyweights would have been happy with that performance against Chisora, and I look really forward to the Joshua fight as we get to it a bit later. Looks like it's going to be probably at some point in mid to late September in England, in the UK. We'll get to some fights for the next 15 minutes or so of what's coming up this weekend. But first, Mr. Anber, you want to guess who I need to talk to about and the fans at home who would like to possibly place a wager with all the action coming forward to you this weekend?
Boxing 99 is the code.
Boxing 99 is the promo code. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
But it's bet99.com. It's Canada's
Bet99.com. That's it.
Right.
But I know about the promo.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you're gonna let me read then the rest of it.
Yeah, you want me to say I'll tell the promo after?
That's right. You'll tell the promo after.
Okay,
so
go
it's
ahead.
Bet99.com. They're Canada's newest online sportsbook and casino. Be sure to check out the player props, the bet builders, the risk-free live bet bonuses, and you use the code. What's the code, Russ?
Boxing 99.
That's right. You get a sports welcome offer, which is a deposit match of 100% up to $600. So a lot of action this weekend. Take a look at bet99.com. But
now you just read the part that I'm supposed to say, right? I'm supposed to be the one endorsing this part that they will match your offer up to $600, and you went and read it. I just asked you, do I mention it after you do this? And you went and did it.
I guess we're going to have to, the routine there, I think it's because of the time difference with Vegas. We're going to have to work on that a little bit. My apologies there. A bit like the shortstop and the second best man, with the, the easy give and go. We got to work on that a little bit. Before I get to the fights this weekend, just real quickly, Shakur Stevenson, he wins, easy decision win, but not the most entertaining of bouts as he's trying to make his claim to being one of the best prospects, trying to get towards a title shot at 130. During the broadcast, ESPN and Scully, you've been a fighter who's been and then a broadcast and analyst. What's your opinion on former fighters being very, very honest in their analysis and their opinion? And Bradley at one point saying he was bored, having a hard time staying up. Do you think it's unfair for the former fighters to be that direct towards the fighters that they're commenting, considering that they've been in the ring before and they should know a little bit different? Or because they've been in the ring before, they should be allowed to say whatever? Because Bradley was very harsh on Shakur Stevenson this past weekend.
Well, I don't know Tim Bradley. I think I met him one time. He seems like a decent guy, but I think I noticed with him lately in the last year or so, his whole persona has changed. I think he's trying to be kind of like Teddy Atlas. Like he's trying to be controversial and say loud things. Like all of a sudden now he talks really loud and really direct. And I don't know if it's a positive thing, really. I'm like, you have to, as a broadcaster, as an analyst, even if you're a former fighter, you have to be straightforward. You have to be realistic. But I don't think being insulting, because he wasn't falling asleep. Let's be real. He's watching the fight. Like that's trying to get like a, be funny. You're trying to be funny at the guy's expense. You're trying to say something memorable. I'm not one of those guys. I'm not trying to insult guys, because I know
hyperbole, right?
Like I'm not trying to be funny at their expense. Because I know how hard it is to be a fighter, and I know how hard it is to be exciting sometimes. Sometimes the fight doesn't call for excitement. The guy hits hard, man. You gotta utilize your boxing skills. So I think Tim is getting a little, I don't know, a little off track a little bit. I think he's trying to be controversial and trying to get his name out there as a broadcaster and, get the Twitter tweets and the retweets and stuff. But, I don't think Shakur is, Boom Boom Mancini. He's not the most exciting guy in the history of the world, right. But he's good. And if you remember, it's hard to, it's actually easy to forget. I remember clearly when Floyd Mayweather was in the same boat, when people were, Bob Arum said, nobody wants to see you, and you're a runner. Boy, people were saying that about Floyd for a long time. And now look at him. He's made more money than 100 guys combined have ever made. So, Floyd could educate Shakur and not to listen. And I'll tell you a funny thing. I often refer to my own career, for good or bad, just because I can give you an analogy, right? A little comparison. And I think I've told Russ this story several times. When I was an amateur, I was a good boxer. Like I was accused of being a runner a lot of the time. I would move and box and whatever. When I turned pro, I remember the day. I remember being in the gym and outboxing. I didn't have any pro fights yet, but I was boxing a pro. And I remember outboxing him. And I remember he just couldn't hit me. And I felt so good. Like I was like, man, this is great. Like he can't even touch me. And I will never, ever, ever forget my manager, my new manager, Mac Buckley, what he said to me. He said, hey, you're not going to be Willie Pep. Audiences don't want to see you moving around. They want to see you coming in and, going toe to toe and backing the guys up. You got to get on TV. That's what you got to do. Now, at the time, I was 21 years old. He's Mac Buckley. He had moved Marlon Starling and different guys. And, so I was caught, I wanted to box. I wanted to use my skills, but he's telling me you got to go forward and you got to be aggressive so people will want to see you on TV. Probably the worst advice I've ever gotten in my life. In my entire life. Shakur Stevenson is not an exciting fighter. So it happened to Tyrell Biggs. If you remember Tyrell Biggs, Russ, he was a great boxer as an amateur. He did it as a pro. His pro debut, he wasn't super exciting, but they couldn't hit him. He was like a Muhammad Ali type of guy, young Muhammad Ali. They told him, I think it was Shelly Finkel and those guys, they told him, you gotta get in there and be more exciting. You're a heavyweight. And next thing you know, he fought Tyson and that was the end of him. And he started getting stopped regularly after that. So I'm not a big fan of sacrificing my skills to try to please people, regardless of the money, because I'm different. I'd rather win, even the money. I'd rather win, and not make as much money. But we live in an era now where, young guys are all about the money. Like that's their goal. That's why they're in the game. They want to be Mayweather money. They want to get the Mayweather, status. So, a lot of guys might sacrifice their skills in order to try and achieve that.
That's well said. And I felt Bradley was being somewhat gratuitous and insulting in what he said, because he could have said everything he wanted to say from a far more constructive point as a trainer would say something than the way he said it, and I was thinking, and Matt, I've started working as an analyst on TV in 1988. I called Roy's Olympic fight in 88. I called that, right? Like I was there. I did a lot of fights after that. And I always worried about, what do I want to say? What do I want to say that's going to be what I would as a trainer say to my fighter in the gym? That's how I went about doing the broadcast, because it's easy to insult guys. It's easy to take, I was falling asleep. You're not helping the guy. And you got Andre Ward sitting there who wants to get up and slap you for saying something like that. And Andre is being very, he says, look, people accused me of that. He's trying to be constructive. Yeah, he's got to work on things. He's got to this, got to that. And you're almost acting like a hypocrite, because prior to this fight, you were saying this guy's one of the best prospects in the game, and you were lauding how great he was, and then you say you were putting me to sleep. You don't know. Is there something wrong? Did he injure himself? Is there an issue? What happened? I was watching the fight saying, what would I say? And now you can't know what's going on if there's an injury or whatnot. So I would have said, me being a boxing analyst and then being a coach and thinking, what do I want to tell the fighter? I'd have said, here's the thing that he's going to have to learn to do. It's one thing when you've got a guy who's throwing all kinds of shots at you and doesn't stop, and he boom, boom, and you've got to box this guy and stay away. And, that's one thing. But when you have a guy that's averaging 2.8 punches around, and he's not throwing shots at you, you need to step up your game. You can't be reacting and being defensive when nothing has been coming at you anyways. So that's something you're going to have to look at as a fighter, that you can't be in a defensive mode when you have no reason to be in a defensive mode. That would have been how I would have approached it. And that would have been honest, straightforward, constructive, and to the point. Instead, you took a free shot at saying he bored me. This is the entertainment business. No, it's not. It's the boxing business.
Right.
It's the boxing business. The entertainment is singing and dancing. That's what entertainment is.
Or Logan Paul, Floyd Mayweather, right?
I'm sorry?
Or Logan Paul, Floyd Mayweather, and these exhibitions, that's the entertainment business.
Whatever it is, but people pay for that. If that's what they want to watch, that's what they want to watch. Okay. Yeah. But you can't turn around and criticize a guy. He's in the boxing business, and that's what he'll do. Have all his fights been like that? No. Has he always been a safety first type fighter? Yes. Okay, so they knew that when they signed him. They knew it when they put him on the air. He didn't go from being Joe Frazier or like you said, Boom Boom Mancini to suddenly this overnight. He's doing exactly what he's done his whole career. What made it even more boring was because the opponent didn't help to contribute to that. And that's a learning experience. So you do what you want to do, but when the other guy didn't play along and didn't follow script, now it made your boxing even more lethargic. It looked like it dragged it out because you didn't have a willing partner. Had the other guy been aggressive and every time he threw something, bam, 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 he's getting hit with combination, boom, bam, 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 the guy wouldn't throw. It's hard to be a counter puncher when there's no punches coming at you to counter. You dig what I'm telling you?
Yeah.
So he could have said those things. He could have said those. Instead, he took a and I don't like, we expect it from media people who don't know boxing. They think it's like wrestling, right? And they take cheap shots and they say, Larry Merchant can take cheap shots at people because you expect them to say stupid things like that because they don't know. They think they know. They pretend they know, and they want to be in the Hall of Fame because they think they know, but they don't know. But Bradley knows. Bradley knows you can't talk like that. You can't speak like that.
Which is why maybe some would argue when you have the pedigree he has, he's maybe a bit more. Look, that's why I'm saying it's different. He has, but at the same time, I would say this: if you're Bradley, and yes, you fought the Provodnikovs that were Fight of the Years, you fought the Juan Manuel Marquez, you fought unbelievable fighters, but you've also fought Manny Pacquiao. That I recall correctly, when you were awarded that decision after the first fight, you went and made a big deal. And it was an unfair criticism, the amount of hatred that he received, and it was depression on his part. And he got so many people, remember, going after him because they thought that the fight was a robbery and it wasn't his fault, but he was awarded the decision. You shouldn't consider that then. If it was that, how that felt for you, receiving all that hate after the Pacquiao decision the first time around, you would think maybe you would consider that into your analysis of, future fights and fighters now.
And nobody is saying not to be honest, because I like Roy Jones. When Roy does the commentary, he's honest what he says. But there's ways of being honest that you don't have to be insulting. There's ways of being honest where right, Scully? You can be.
No, that's my whole thing. You're turning into like a corporation guy. You're turning into one of these guys, Larry Merchant, who can say funny stuff like. Like Larry Merchant said things, and I'm just looking at the screen like, you're a piece of garbage. Like, you claim to love fighters, but you have no trouble insulting these guys, thinking you're funny and thinking you're slick. Yeah. And it's, they pay, fighters are, if boxing, the only thing the only people that boxing can't live without is the fighter, Larry Merchant could retire. Everybody could retire. Every announcer could retire. Everybody can retire. But if two guys want to fight, they're going to go to a gym somewhere and they're going to glove themselves up and they're going to fight each other. They're the only ones. And, so it's disheartening when a fighter gets to be that way, where he starts talking like the guys that he probably couldn't stand when he was a fighter. So like I said, but with Bradley, I think I noticed that, he tries to do almost like to be like Teddy Atlas, and he's yelling on the air and, making these bold statements, which he never did before. And now all of a sudden he's doing it. I think he either got it in his head or somebody told him, you need to be more exciting. You need to be, controversial, and I think he's going with that route. But I'm disheartened. I'm a little disappointed in a guy like him, trying to take a little funny, cheap shot at Shakur. Because again, like as a fighter, I understand what it is to be in there, and sometimes it doesn't work, and it's not a good feeling, and you don't need one of your peers making a joke out of it.
That's the thing, if anybody, you can get the other people who are going to take shots at the fighters, the writers, the keyboard warriors, all these people who take shots at fighters. You're supposed to be there to defend them. You're one of them. What are you doing? You've changed allegiance now,
And you know what, Russ? You mentioned Roy earlier, and I think we said Roy was never shy about going, Larry, listen, this is what it is. Like, as a fighter.
Foreman too.
Yeah, you're right. Foreman and Roy used to put Larry in check all the time.
Yeah.
And I understood, like Foreman said some like seemingly outrageous things, but as a fighter, I knew exactly what he meant. And I'm sure you did too, because you understand fighters' mentality and what it is. And so Foreman would say it and Merchant would laugh at it like it's a joke. And I'm like, I don't know what you're laughing at. Like Foreman is dead on accurate.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. So we're almost at the stage of wrapping up. Just real quickly, Larry Merchant, the type of guy he is, but he was. I think there's an audience for it. His role in what he did. But just to give you a bit of an idea, because talking about the frustration sometimes for some of these fighters and the comments he would take. He used to cover baseball for Philadelphia, one of the newspapers, and he would travel with the team. And he was slamming this picture, which I forget the name, unfortunately, but you can Google it. So he's always talking about this pitcher's having a bad season. So at one point during the flight, the pitcher's in the same flight and Larry Merchant, and Larry's typewriting in the back. The pitcher gets out of his seat, takes his typewriter, throws it across the airplane, if you will. So what do you think, Larry Merchant? The next day, he puts up his telegraph and he writes, "That was the best throw he made all season." He was going to be that way till the end. You got to give him credit for that, though.
But that's the thing. We can expect it from the Larry Merchants. We can expect it from the Jim Romes of the world. We can expect it from the shock jocks who say things just to get that type of reaction. But don't be a hypocrite and travel in the team bus and travel with the team and then turn around and be insulting. Red Fisher made a
he's
career.
Not a hypocrite, at least he's doing it in front of them. That's one thing. You don't see it as much anymore.
Okay, but even if you were doing that, you don't have the right to be insulting when you're living in the same home with somebody. You're on their flight. You want to be insulting? Get away from us and say what you want to say. But don't do it while you're traveling under the same roof as me. You can't have someone coming into your house and insulting you, and it's supposed to be okay because, hey, I'm telling the truth. I don't care. You can't come into my house and insult me.
Unless it's kids, right? Teenage kids, that they can do that all the time, right? Insult you in your own home.
I want to throw them out as well.
All right, just a parting shot, gentlemen. We have about 2 minutes here. Jermall Charlo against Montiel this weekend. Juan Macias Montiel, who's big puncher, but of course is also somebody who fights by the, lives by the sword, dies by the sword type guy. You have Jaime Munguia against Camille Zaramata on the zone. Zaramata, the guy that Golovkin defeated quite easily. And then Naona Inoue against Michael Dasmarinas. I believe that's how you properly pronounce it. Just what would be the parting shot, if you will, or the water cooler moment from these fights you think it's going to happen? Any of those fights that stand out for this weekend in about a minute or so, gentlemen?
I like both the Charlo. I like watching the Charlos. I think we need to see more of the Charlos in fights, that really show how good they are. I think that they've made some money. They're doing well. But boy, you just don't associate. It's almost as if they retired tomorrow, people wouldn't notice for a while that they're gone, and I think they need those breakout fights, those big fights, because they're super talented, well-trained, punch hard, they got everything going for them, so I like him. And there has to be that curiosity and that interest when a fighter who's nicknamed the Monster is fighting. you got to watch. And he lives up to the nickname. I mean, you got to watch, right? You got to watch.
100%. Scully?
Yeah, I like, the Charlos, they're it's like they're waiting for that breakout fight and they're just not getting it. People know who they are, but we haven't seen them against the elite guys. And there's been so much talk with Triple G and different things like that. And I'm anxious myself to see them against a proven star. And I think they're going to shine, but we'll see.
The thing with the Charlos is that they're the guys you're going to avoid anyways, because they're so dangerous. So they need to take advantage of the big fights when they get them. And Scully say people know them. Fight people know them.
Right.
They're better than just being known by fight people.
That's what I mean. That's what I'm saying. They're better than that, even though they haven't got maybe they haven't got the fight because they're that good,
Right.
Right.
So,
and they made a lot of money though, right? With the Al Heyman there are examples perfect of the Al Heyman playbook of having opponents and title defenses, and they're still able to make quite a good amount of money fighting fighters that not necessarily everybody wants to see. But when Charlo fought Jermall, who's fighting this upcoming weekend, when he fought Derevchenko, he looked really, really good against a Derevchenko who had given trouble to Danny Jacobs and to Golovkin even. So look, I agree with you. I think once he'll probably win this fight in a more exciting fashion because Montiel is going to force it out of him. But we definitely want to see him on the short list of possible opponents for Canelo in the case of Jermall Charlo. So, gentlemen, thank you so much. We could have went on for hours with all the, of course, when we started talking about training camp and inside stuff, but which is why, Scully, thank you so much for being a regular guest. I think you're putting up quite a tab, though, on Russ's fast food bill for when you do meet with him, right? If it's In-N-Out Burger or Scully, we owe him quite a few meals right now.
Yes, we do, but that's okay. He's easy to please with eating, so don't worry about it.
Oh, ice cream, right? We're going to get some ice cream.
100%.
All right, boys.
Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for tuning in.
All right.
All right, guys.